This is Greg Salyer. Welcome to Giving Birth to Gods and Monsters, Chaos and Creation. It is no surprise that some of our most dynamic and influential stories are about us, and creation stories in particular are resonant with our deepest hopes and fears. We might wonder then why we would be interested in stories that are not about us. That is, creation myths of the gods themselves. If gods were only supernatural beings that existed above and beyond us, we might show only a passing interest in their interactions, since those would have little to no effect on us. But in fact, we have a deep interest in the creation of the gods, along with their loves and wars, because they do have an effect on us, especially if they are us. Two of our earliest epics offer creation myths of the gods and profound images for how we understand ourselves. These are the ancient Mesopotamian story Enuma Elish and the Greek writer Hesiod's poem Theogony. Composed in ancient Mesopotamia, which is now Iraq, in the 18th century BCE, and written down in 1100 BCE, Enuma Elish may be the oldest story in the world. It is certainly one of the oldest. The title is simply the first words of the story, When on High. While it ends with the creation of human beings by blood, the story is concerned with the loves and wars of the gods before human beings even appeared. When the skies above were not yet named, nor earth below pronounced by name, Apsu, the first one, their begetter and maker Tiamat, who bore them all, had mixed their waters together, but had not formed pastures, nor discovered reed beds. Yet when no gods were manifest, nor names pronounced, nor destinies decreed, then gods were born within them. Thus begins Enuma Elish, When on High. The epic describes two primeval gods, Apsu and Tiamat. Apsu is the god of the fresh waters. Tiamat is the goddess of the salt waters. The union of the two gods produces other gods. But soon Apsu is bothered by the children's noise and disorder. The text indicates that these new gods, quote, stirred up Tiamat's belly, unquote, but Tiamat indulged them. Apsu suggests to Tiamat that they should kill the young gods, saying, I shall abolish their ways and disperse them. Tiamat angrily rejects his plan. How could we allow what we ourselves created to perish? Even though their ways are so grievous, we should bear it patiently. Apsu is thus provoked to destroy the younger gods. Ea, the wisest of the deities, learns of the plan, puts Apsu to sleep, kills him, and creates an abode from his body. Ea then begets a son, Marduk, even greater than himself. Marduk fashioned the dust and made the whirlwind carry it. He made the flood wave and stirred up Tiamat, so says Enuma Elish. Tiamat again does not react, but heaved restlessly day and night. This time, it is some of her children who cannot bear the noise of young Marduk. They accuse Tiamat, saying, Are you not a mother? You heave restlessly, but what about us who cannot rest? Don't you love us? Tiamat agrees to take action. She gathers great weapons and venomous monster snakes. Ea, the father of Marduk, is afraid of Tiamat, yet he tries to downplay her power, saying, However strong a woman's strength, it is not equal to a man's. Marduk agrees to make war against Tiamat. He made a circle to He made a net to encircle Tiamat within it, and introduces evil winds that advanced behind him to make turmoil inside Tiamat. Then we hear a speech from Marduk addressing Tiamat. Why are you so friendly on the surface when your depths conspire to muster a battle force? Just because the sons were noisy and disrespectful to their fathers, should you, who gave them birth, reject compassion? Marduk accuses Tiamat, the mother, of not protecting her sons. Then the text reads, when Tiamat heard this, she went wild. She lost her temper. A cosmic combat between Marduk and Tiamat begins. In the end, Tiamat and her allies are destroyed by Marduk, who sliced her in half like a fish for drying. Half of her he put up to the roof of the sky. Marduk splits her in two, creating heaven and earth from her body, the Tigris and Euphrates from her eyes, mist from her spittle, mountains from her breasts, and so on. Throughout the epic, there are differing descriptions of Tiamat. She appears both as a body of water, as a human figure, and as having a tail. These varying descriptions are ultimately reconciled as Marduk turns her limbs into geographical features. Theogony is a Greek compound word made up of the word theos for gods and gone for birth. Like every ancient epic, it circulated orally before being written down, sometime between 750 and 650 BCE. Unlike the lauded Homer, who lived before him and produced the great epics the Iliad and the Odyssey, Hesiod was, as he would put it, a simple farmer touched by the muses while tending his sheep. His other work, Works and Days, is directed at his brother, who took more than his fair share of their father's inheritance, and praises the value of simple work in harmony with the earth's rhythms. The Theogony, on the other hand, is a highly detailed account of 3 generations of divinity, their loves and battles, and their ultimate creation of human beings for the purpose of doing the work of the world, including worshiping the gods. In the beginning was chaos, and from chaos came night and day. Also from chaos came earth, Gaia, who bore heaven or sky, Uranos, as well as other children, including Eros, desire, Tartarus, underworld, Erebus, darkness, and Nyx, night. From Nyx would come doom, dreams, discord, blame, and sleep. We can see already in these first generations of the gods personifications of human life in the world in which we live. The original gods are thus experienced every time we see the sky, feel desire, or fall asleep. The second generation was called the Titans, and their father Uranos hated them. After each child was born, Uranos would hide the infant deep in the earth away from the light. However, their grief-stricken mother Gaia had a plan to repay his wicked crime. In this second generation of the gods comes crooked scheming Kronos, the enemy of his father Uranos. One evening, when Uranos approached his wife to lay upon her, a hiding Kronos emerged and took a long-bladed sickle given to him by his mother and castrated his father. The dripping blood gave birth to both the Furies and the giants, and the severed genitals were thrown into the sea, from which Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was born. The third generation of the gods involves the birth of Zeus and a replication of the jealous and savage father's story. Kronos, the father of the third generation of the gods, seizes each child and swallows them. Zeus, however, is stolen away by his mother, Rhea, to be raised in secret on the island of Crete. Cronos had learned from Gaia and Uranos that he would be overthrown by one of his children, even as he overthrew his own father. After Zeus, the future king of the gods, returns from his hiding place, he rises up against his father with the other gods of his generation, and in one version, he is castrated. And in one version, castrated him. These victorious deities become the Olympian gods of the Greek pantheon and the source of many temples, worship, and myths. There are volumes and volumes of scholarship and interpretation of these two stories, and we have only scratched the surface of them because here we have our own focus, which is, what do these myths tell us about gods and monsters? The answer is quite a bit. One answer is that we are obsessed with chaos and order. These two epics begin like nearly every other creation story in the world, with chaos. They also move in the same direction, toward order. You might recall that this is a similar move to that found in the cognitive science of religion. In fact, Enuma Elish and the Theogony can be seen as dramatic depictions of how we make a god. Namely, we ascribe something unknown agency. Then we ascribe it animism, and then anthropomorphism. We can see in these stories a vague agency, such as Eros, develop into purpose and eventually into a god. The more anthropomorphic the deities become, the closer we come to civilization itself and the further away from chaos. Interestingly, the more anthropomorphic the gods become, the more concerned they are with possession of the world and their own succession as kings of it. In fact, both stories are usually interpreted as allegories of kingship in the ancient world. That is, stories about the gods bequeathing power to human beings and kings to their sons. Accordingly, these stories are about divine men and their deep anxieties about power, especially the power of women. In fact, we are likely seeing here, especially in the written version of these stories, the passing of one mode of being into another, from the feminine to the masculine. Tiamat is killed in Enuma Elish because she tries to protect her children and ultimately goes to war to do so. In the Theogony, Gaia, Rhea, and Hera, along with many of the other goddesses, must protect their children from their jealous and murderous husbands. In the fundamental structures of both stories, like the beginnings of the patriarchy, in the fundamental structures of both stories are the beginnings of the patriarchy, along with its anxieties about power. In both stories, the goddesses are invested in prolonging life, while gods are invested in obtaining power and using death to do so. Finally, and as is no doubt obvious to you now, in these two stories of giving birth to gods and monsters, there is no distinction between gods and monsters. The beings are both divine and monstrous and exemplify our greatest hopes and deepest fears. In fact, it might be more accurate to call them godsters, god-monster hybrids that exist beyond good and evil. That we humans would tell these stories might well mean that we know that we are both gods and monsters. Godsters, full of deep fears and high hopes, obsessed with making order in a chaotic world and holding on to it by any means necessary.